It was a warm summer afternoon in a small southern town where the air hung heavy with the weight of unspoken tension. Liam, a young black man in his early 20s, had just finished his shift at a local auto repair shop. With grease-streaked hands and a tired smile, he hopped onto his bike and started the ride home, savoring the thought of finally putting his feet up. Liam wasn't just good with cars, he loved them. From a young age, he'd tinkered with engines, learning from his late father, who had always told him that hard work and kindness could open doors, even in a world that didn't always feel fair. But Liam had long since learned that kindness didn't always guarantee kindness in return. As he pedaled down the road, his thoughts were interrupted by the sight of a car pulled over on the shoulder. The unmistakable red and blue lights of a police vehicle flashed against the fading sunlight. Liam slowed down out of curiosity, his heart pounding slightly as he recognized the officer standing by the car. It was Officer Grayson, a man infamous in their community for his biased behavior and sharp tongue, particularly toward young black men like Liam. Liam considered pedaling past without a second glance, but something made him stop. He noticed that the officer was struggling with a flat tire, crouched down beside his car with a scowl that could intimidate even the most courageous. Nearby, another motorist had pulled over but seemed hesitant to approach the officer. Liam took a deep breath and got off his bike, walking it slowly toward the scene. His heart told him to help, just like his father would have, but his head reminded him of the potential dangers of getting involved. Yet as he got closer, he saw the frustration and sweat on Officer Grayson's face, and a wave of empathy overrode his fear. "Need a hand, sir?" Liam asked cautiously, keeping a respectful distance. Grayson looked up, his initial expression one of irritation, as if he were about to shoo Liam away. But perhaps it was the sincerity in Liam's voice, or the sheer exhaustion in the moment, because the officer didn't object. Instead, he simply grunted and motioned toward the trunk. Liam got to work immediately, pulling out the spare tire and jack from the trunk. His hands moved deftly, loosening lug nuts and replacing the tire with practiced ease. Grayson stood silently for a moment, watching Liam's efficiency. It was clear the officer was torn between gratitude and the biases he'd carried for years. "You seem to know what you're doing," Grayson muttered after a long silence, his tone neutral, but his eyes wary. Liam shrugged as he tightened the last bolt. "It's what I do for a living," he replied simply, not looking for praise or acknowledgement. As Liam wiped his hands on a rag, Grayson surprised him with a quiet, "Thanks." It wasn't enthusiastic, but it was sincere, and Liam nodded in acknowledgement, feeling a flicker of something he couldn't quite name. As Liam got back on his bike and pedaled away, he couldn't shake the odd mixture of emotions brewing inside him. He had always believed in leading with kindness, but he wondered if it had made any real difference to a man like Grayson. Meanwhile, the officer stood by his car, staring at the retreating figure of the young man who had just helped him. Grayson couldn't deny that Liam's gesture had caught him off guard, challenging the deeply ingrained prejudices he'd carried for so long. The encounter had left a mark on both of them, setting the stage for a series of events that would forever alter their lives. The next morning, Liam went about his usual routine, but the memory of helping Officer Grayson lingered in his mind. As he prepared to head to work, he shrugged it off, telling himself it was just another moment in life that wouldn't mean much in the grand scheme of things. However, as he rode his bike to the auto repair shop, he noticed something unusual. A patrol car was parked near the entrance. Liam's stomach sank as he recognized the vehicle, Officer Grayson's. He hesitated, unsure of why the officer would be there. Was he in trouble? Had Grayson misinterpreted his help the day before? Steeling himself, Liam parked his bike and walked cautiously toward the shop, nodding politely as he passed the officer. Grayson, leaning against his car, acknowledged him with a brief nod, but didn't say much. Liam hurried inside, trying to shake the feeling of being watched. The day unfolded as usual, with Liam busy repairing cars and chatting with customers. However, every now and then, he caught glimpses of Grayson outside through the shop windows. The officer hadn't left. By lunchtime, Liam's curiosity got the better of him. Wiping his hands on a rag, he stepped outside, finding Grayson still standing by his car. "Is everything okay, officer?" Liam asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. Grayson looked at him for a moment, his expression unreadable before speaking. "I wanted to thank you again for helping me yesterday," he began, his voice steady but hesitant, as if the words were foreign to him. "It's not often that someone goes out of their way for someone like me." Liam frowned slightly, unsure how to respond to the officer's unspoken acknowledgement of their shared reality. "It was no big deal," Liam replied with a shrug. "Helping people is just what I believe in." Grayson seemed to consider this, nodding slowly. What happened next caught Liam completely off guard. Grayson reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. "If you ever need anything," he said, handing it to Liam, "don't hesitate to reach out." Liam hesitated, taking the card with a mix of confusion and skepticism. It was a small gesture, but it seemed genuine. Liam thanked him politely, not sure what to make of the exchange. Grayson lingered for a moment before finally getting into his patrol car and driving away, leaving Liam standing there, clutching the card. Back inside, Liam's co-workers bombarded him with questions. "What was that about?" one of them asked, clearly intrigued. Liam shrugged, keeping the details to himself. He didn't want to stir up unnecessary drama or speculation, especially since he wasn't entirely sure what Grayson's intentions were. That evening, as Liam sat on his porch, he replayed the day's events in his mind. He couldn't ignore the subtle shift he'd seen in Grayson's demeanor. It was as if the officer had been trying to bridge a gap, to reach out in a way that was unfamiliar but meaningful. Liam didn't know if he should trust it, or if it was just a fleeting moment of decency. Either way, he decided to hold onto the card, tucking it into his wallet with a sense of cautious optimism. Little did he know, this simple act of helping Grayson would soon lead to a series of events that would challenge both of them in ways they never expected, forcing them to confront their biases, beliefs, and the true meaning of humanity. The following day began as uneventfully as any other for Liam. He arrived at the shop, prepared for a day of fixing cars and getting lost in the steady rhythm of work. However, around mid-morning, a familiar patrol car pulled into the lot, and once again, Officer Grayson stepped out. This time, his presence didn't feel like a coincidence. Liam noticed the curious glances from his co-workers as Grayson entered the shop, walking directly toward him. "Liam," the officer began, his voice steady, but less guarded than before. "I hope I'm not interrupting your work." Liam, slightly taken aback, put down the wrench he was holding and nodded. "Not at all, officer. What brings you back?" Grayson hesitated before continuing, his words measured. "I wanted to apologize. I know I've not always been fair in how I've treated people in this community. Yesterday made me realize some things I hadn't thought about before. You didn't have to help me, but you did, and it stuck with me." Liam was stunned into silence for a moment. Apologies from people like Grayson, those in positions of authority who often wielded their power unevenly, were rare, almost unheard of. He studied the officer's face, searching for any sign of insincerity, but found none. Grayson continued, "I don't expect you to forgive me or even to believe me, but I'm trying to do better. And I thought the best way to start was by acknowledging my mistakes." The shop fell quiet as Liam's co-workers eavesdropped on the unexpected exchange. Liam finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "I appreciate that, officer. It takes a lot to admit when you're wrong, but words only go so far. Change has to follow." Grayson nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You're right," he said, "and I hope I can prove that with time." With that, Grayson turned and walked out of the shop, leaving Liam and everyone else in stunned silence. The rest of the day passed uneventfully, but Liam couldn't shake the conversation from his mind. That evening, He shared the encounter with his mother over dinner. A wise and compassionate woman, she listened intently before offering her thoughts. "Sometimes, people just need a moment to see things differently," she said. "What you did for that man wasn't just about changing a tire. It was about showing him a side of humanity he might not have been willing to see before." Liam nodded, understanding her perspective but still feeling conflicted. "I just hope it wasn't for nothing," he replied. "People like him have the power to make things better for everyone, but it's hard to believe they'll actually follow through." His mother smiled gently. "Change doesn't happen overnight, son, but even the smallest step forward is worth something." The following morning, as Liam got ready for work, he received an unexpected phone call. It was from a local community leader who ran an outreach program for underserved youth. "Liam," the man said, his tone warm. "I don't know what you said or did, but Officer Grayson reached out to us. He wants to partner with our program to help mentor young people in the community. He even mentioned your name as someone who inspired him." Liam was stunned. He couldn't believe that his small act of kindness had sparked such a significant change. As he hung up the phone, a sense of cautious optimism washed over him. Perhaps his mother was right. Perhaps even the smallest steps could lead to something meaningful. Later that same day, Liam arrived at work with a lot on his mind. The phone call from the community leader had left him both surprised and intrigued. Could Grayson, the very officer whose reputation for bias had cast a long shadow over their neighborhood, truly be changing? Liam wasn't entirely convinced, but he also couldn't ignore the fact that the officer had taken steps to reach out to the community. As he wiped down his workbench and prepared for the next car repair, he decided to focus on his tasks, letting the thoughts simmer quietly in the back of his mind. The day moved at its usual pace, until during his lunch break, Liam was approached by one of his co-workers. "Hey, Liam," the man said, gesturing toward the shop's parking lot. "That cop's here again. What's going on between you two?" The question wasn't accusatory, but it was filled with curiosity, and Liam couldn't blame him. Stepping outside, Liam saw Grayson once again, leaning against his patrol car. He sighed inwardly, not in frustration, but in cautious anticipation of whatever this meeting would bring. "Officer Grayson," Liam said, walking up to him. "Didn't expect to see you again so soon." Grayson straightened and offered a small smile. "I know I'm probably overstepping by coming here again, but I wanted to talk to you about something." Liam crossed his arms, waiting. "I've been working with the community outreach program," Grayson began, his tone sincere. "We're setting up a mentorship initiative for the youth in the neighborhood, and I want you to be part of it. You're exactly the kind of role model these kids need. Hardworking, compassionate, and determined." The proposal caught Liam off guard. He wasn't sure whether to feel flattered or skeptical. "Why me?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with curiosity. "Because you represent what I want them to see," Grayson replied. "Someone who doesn't let circumstances define them, who takes the high road even when it's hard." Liam hesitated. It was true that he had always tried to lead with kindness and integrity. But he wasn't sure he wanted to be tied to anything associated with Grayson, given the officer's history. "I'll think about it," Liam finally said, his tone neutral. Grayson nodded, seeming to understand his hesitation. "That's all I can ask," he said, "but I hope you'll give it serious consideration. This could make a real difference." As Grayson drove away, Liam stood there, conflicted. On one hand, the initiative sounded promising, and the chance to positively impact the community was something he couldn't easily dismiss. On the other hand, aligning himself with someone like Grayson felt risky, especially given the officer's past. That evening, Liam sought advice from his mother once again. As they sat on the porch, the warm glow of the setting sun casting long shadows across the yard, he explained the situation. His mother listened intently, her face calm and thoughtful. "It sounds like an opportunity to do some real good," she said. "But I understand why you're hesitant. You've seen the damage people like him can do, and it's hard to trust that he's truly changed. Still, son, you have the chance to shape this initiative in a way that reflects your values. If you lead with integrity, the people who matter will see that." Liam nodded, absorbing her words. She was right. This wasn't just about Grayson. It was about the community, about the kids who needed guidance and hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could turn this into something meaningful. The next morning, Liam woke up with a renewed sense of purpose, though the weight of the decision still lingered. He had spent much of the night reflecting on his mother's advice, as well as his own reservations. Grayson's proposal was an opportunity to make a real difference in the lives of young people who, like him, had grown up facing systemic challenges. But the risk of associating with someone who had once been a symbol of those challenges wasn't lost on him. As Liam rode his bike to the shop, he made up his mind to meet Grayson halfway. He would agree to participate in the mentorship initiative, but on his own terms. He would set clear boundaries and ensure that the program genuinely benefited the community. Later that day, Liam called Grayson to let him know of his decision. "I'll do it," he said, his voice firm. "But only if this initiative is transparent and truly focused on the kids. No hidden agendas, no excuses for past mistakes. Just real, honest work to help these kids build a better future." Grayson's response was immediate and genuine. "I wouldn't expect anything less," he said. "Thank you, Liam. You won't regret this." The first step was to meet with the community outreach team and begin shaping the program. That weekend, Grayson and Liam met with the program's organizers, a diverse group of educators, community leaders, and volunteers. The meeting was tense at first, with many participants clearly wary of Grayson's involvement. But as Liam shared his vision for the program, focusing on education, mentorship, and life skills, the mood began to shift. Over the next few days, Liam threw himself into the work of developing the initiative. He collaborated with teachers to design workshops, reached out to local businesses for sponsorships, and spoke with parents to better understand the needs of the kids in the community. Grayson, to Liam's surprise, proved to be an active and committed partner. He attended every meeting, listened more than he spoke, and worked to build trust with the community members. Though there were still moments of tension and doubt, Liam began to see glimpses of genuine change in the officer's actions. It wasn't just about words anymore. Grayson was putting in the effort to back them up. The first official event for the program was a weekend workshop at the local community center. Dozens of kids showed up, eager to learn and connect with mentors. Liam led a session on practical skills, teaching the kids how to repair bicycles and basic household items. Grayson, to Liam's surprise, conducted a workshop on personal safety and self-defense, emphasizing the importance of building trust with law enforcement while also knowing one's rights. The kids responded positively, and by the end of the day, the center was buzzing with energy and hope. As the event wrapped up, Grayson pulled Liam aside. "I want you to know how much I appreciate your involvement in this," he said. "I know I have a long way to go to earn the trust of this community, but working with you has been eye-opening for me." Liam nodded, still cautious but willing to acknowledge the progress. "It's a start," he said. "Let's just make sure we keep moving forward." As the day of the program's final event approached, Liam couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and apprehension. Over the past few weeks, he had poured his heart and soul into the mentorship initiative, working tirelessly to ensure its success. The kids had responded with enthusiasm, and even the most skeptical parents began to show signs of trust. Yet the shadow of doubt still lingered. Could this momentum last? Could Grayson, despite his best efforts, truly shed the weight of his past actions? These questions weighed heavily on Liam as he prepared for the event, a community-wide celebration at the park that would feature workshops, games, and speeches from key organizers. The day of the event arrived, and the park was alive with activity. Families gathered under colorful tents, kids played games and participated in activities, and volunteers bustled about, ensuring everything ran smoothly. Liam had just finished setting up his station, a booth where kids could learn basic car repair, when he noticed Grayson standing near the entrance. The officer seemed different that day, more at ease, as though he was finally starting to feel accepted. As Grayson walked through the park, he greeted families, shook hands, and even took the time to play catch with some of the kids. Liam watched from a distance, still unsure whether to fully trust this transformation, but willing to acknowledge the effort. When it was time for the speeches, Liam took the stage first. He spoke passionately about the importance of community, resilience, and giving back, emphasizing that the program was just the beginning. "This is about more than mentorship," he said. "It's about showing our kids that they're capable of achieving greatness, no matter the challenges they face." The crowd erupted in applause, and Liam felt a swell of hope. Next, Grayson stepped up to the microphone. The silence was palpable as the crowd waited to hear what he would say. "I know I haven't always been the person this community needed me to be," Grayson began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "But today isn't about the past. It's about the future. It's about making sure every kid here knows they have people who believe in them, who will fight for them, and who will help them succeed." His words were met with tentative applause, but as the event continued, the atmosphere softened and the lines of division began to blur. By the end of the day, the park was filled with laughter, joy, and a sense of unity that Liam hadn't seen in years. As he packed up his booth, Grayson approached him one last time. "Liam," he said, his voice quiet but firm, "I owe you more than I can ever express. You didn't just help me change a tire. You helped me change my perspective, my purpose, and maybe even my life." Liam looked at him, his expression unreadable for a moment, before offering a small nod. "Just keep doing the work, Grayson," he said. "Words are easy. Actions are what matter." As the two men parted ways, Liam felt a sense of closure. The journey had been unexpected and challenging, but it had also been transformative, not just for Grayson, but for the entire community. And in that moment, Liam realized that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could lead to the biggest changes.